We are here with Cheryl. I didn't tell you, Cheryl. My mother's name is also Cheryl, and she spells it with a Y. She goes SH. But we're here with Cheryl. She's one of our local candidates. Cheryl, thanks for taking the time and joining us today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just so everyone that's watching the video knows, we have 5 questions that we go over with every candidate. And then we go off on little tangents and side conversations because we're humans and that's what we do. So Cheryl, just for the first question, what district are you running for and where does that cover?
I'm running for House District 99, and it covers all of Harpswell and part of East Brunswick.
Yes, that's correct. There's been some redistricting for those that have watched other videos. They're familiar with this, but every 10 years they do the census, and with the census, with people moving, they change the districts a little bit. And so this is one that's pretty much the same as it was. There's been some slight changes, but yeah, East Brunswick and Harpswell. Cheryl, question 2, tell us a little bit about your background and why you're running for office.
Well, I've lived in the district my entire life. I was born in Cook's Corner, actually right where the cinema is. I live in Harpswell, and I am one of the founders of the Vicarage by the Sea, which is a long-term care home for people living with dementia. So I've been an older care advocate and a local employer for the past 25 years. I come from generational poverty.
Yep.
Fortunate to no longer be there anymore, but it gives me some insights on the social service nets that we have. And I am running for office for no bigger reason than to be able to give back to a community that has given me so much.
Wow, that is an admirable answer. And yes, and Vicarage by the Sea, we've hosted some chamber events out there, and seen that facility, and you do incredible work out there. There's such a need for it for sure. Especially, I mean, healthcare, but senior care as well, dementia care, especially. So great. Question 3, the big question. What are the top 3 issues affecting Mainers right now that you look forward to working on if elected?
Well, from speaking to the thousands of people in my district, and I agree wholeheartedly, is the top issue that we have right now is housing affordability.
Yeah.
In our state. And then it's connected to our workforce. We have a severe workforce shortage in our state. And number 3, what I'm hearing is healthcare costs, affordability, and access to all.
Absolutely. The housing and the workforce being tied together is kind of a new thing. It happens. A little background, the chamber's doing some work around this as well and trying to get some groups together, and we're working on the workforce issues too. But one of the things that's happened is the demographics, as I know you know because you've been in senior care, with just us being older and so many people retiring, that's a lot of the workforce shortage, and workforce development has never had to look at the social issues. And now, we've always had more people than we have jobs, and now we've got more jobs than we've got people. So we need to look at that bubble of unemployed people and say, for those that want to work, what are their barriers? And transportation is a barrier for some. Substance abuse is a barrier for some. Imprisonment is a barrier for some, and not being able to get hired. But housing is one of the absolutely critical ones, because if we don't have a place for people to live in our area, they can't work in our area. And so workforce development is just starting to see these connections, and to hear you say that how intertwined they are, that they really are. And I think part of it comes from when some people retire in other parts of the country, they move to wherever they want to retire to. People here love living here, so they retire and they just say, cool, I'm just going to live here at my house because that's where I live. But then whoever's going to replace them in the workforce, that house is not part of the inventory that if they need to move here from somewhere else to live. So we just need to grow all of it. And there are some issues there that I think the legislature and the city and town councils and organizations like chambers can work together and sort out some solutions there. So really happy to hear you say those. And yeah, yeah. So
So, houses, the replenishing our house, and it's complicated because, like you just looked up, there's not just one answer to the problem, but there is a direct connection to a housing affordability and a workforce shortage. I mean, personally, as a business owner, I've lost really good employees because I couldn't afford to live in the area anymore, and we really have to fix it. And we are the oldest populace in the nation now.
yep.
And that's not a bad thing. I mean, look at Harpswell, my district's an older population. We have some tremendous volunteer
Oh,
things, like Harpswell Agent at Home, I mean, so, but we need a balance. What I'm hearing from people at the doors is, hey, I'm doing this, but I'm 70, 85 years old. And, in 4 or 5 years, I'm not going to be able to do this.
yep.
And who's going to do it so that I can continue to stay in my home?
That's it.
So,
That's it.
we need things like daycare, affordability, and housing. But if we're going to track back, I mean, Harpswell lost a whole school several years back because our population had just shifted
Yeah.
and changed. So yeah, I really want to work with small businesses and stuff on how we can replenish our workforce, but we've also got to really address and quicker than we are addressing it, how we're going to create affordability housing. And I have several thoughts on how that could happen. But it's going to take the community coming together and actually doing it.
Thank you for mentioning how quick it is and how, like, as I'm starting to have these conversations statewide, I'm hearing things like, oh, we got to get a committee together and we'll meet sometime next month or the month after. And it's like, no, we need the answer. We actually need the answers before now. Like we're getting towards kind of crisis levels where this needs to start moving and moving quickly. But the other part that you mentioned too is so crucial is we need the community buy-in for it, because having people say, yes, we absolutely need more housing. Oh, but not in my part of town. We need housing, but it needs to be somewhere else. It's like you either want housing or you don't. And if you're going to have some of these projects and some of these things happening, it is going to change some of your landscapes. It might change where you walk your dog or go for a hike, and it might obstruct a view that you currently have that you'd love to keep. But also, it's what's best for our community. What does our community need? It needs housing, and so it needs some of these things. And as a community, we need to just start to become comfortable with the areas around us are gonna change a little bit when we're building these things. So
We do, but housing is good for our economy. There's healthcare links to a housing, our workforce shortage is linked to a housing, and we really have to address it. And one of the bigger issues of our housing right now, and I'll talk about, is, we have this great Section 8 housing voucher system. And I say great because I would not be where I am today without it.
wow.
Now, what's so great about it is, you can actually save and climb up, and eventually you don't need that voucher.
Yep.
The problem is you can wait years to get that voucher.
That's it.
Yeah, I've got an intellectually handicapped brother that waited over 4 years to get this voucher. He almost lost it in 90 days because nobody takes them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I read in the Brunswick Times record about a month or so back, Tedford Shelter has 40 people with vouchers. Nobody will rent to them.
Yeah.
This is a problem. It's not supposed to be a system that's supposed to be discriminated against, but it's blatantly discriminated against. And I personally would support a percentage. I think people learn, and what I mean from that is say a landlord owns at least 30 units or more. And then 20% of them should be income-based.
Yeah.
And voucher approved. We open up housing. Now, that doesn't mean the state doesn't have to come up with some incentives along with maybe the town that they're living in to help make that happen. But then you're allowing people to live closer to their jobs, closer to educational experiences. If they have a disability or children with disability, are allowed to live closer to the resources that they have or need, transportation and stuff like that. And it also will eliminate the discrimination that's been happening in the system since it was created 40 years ago. You know,
and what I love that you said was, it's not, hey, the legislature's going to pass a rule to do this. You said we've got to get the landlords and everyone together to talk about how do we do this, and that's the key. It's getting the right people to the table and all agreeing this is something that we need to fix. So how are we going to fix it
and we
together?
do, you know, we can do that. I mean, look at LD 2003. I sat on the Housing Commission to look at the zoning laws and stuff. You know, change was there, Maine People's Alliance was there. We all did it and we got it passed. I think we need to do the same thing with housing. I think the legislature is going to have to be involved in it and help them making these decisions, because the bottom line, we've had this housing system for 40 years. 40 years. I had children more than 30 years ago and got told repeatedly by people 30 years ago, I'm sorry, we don't rent to you people. I have family members and friends that 35 years later is still being told, I'm sorry, we don't rent to you people. So after 40 years of having a program that is a decent program, it's clear that unless there's some kind of mandate and negotiation there, that people just aren't going to take it. And we have to acknowledge that. In the middle of a housing crisis, when 66% of Cumberland County can't afford a 2-bedroom apartment at market rate housing, and all we're building is market rate housing in my area, there's a problem. And it's in the ripple effect to what it's doing to businesses. You're watching, you know, seasonal businesses close early, a month early, so that because they don't have enough workers. Our hospital care system doesn't have enough workers. Our lobstermen don't have enough sternmen. You know, our child care centers can't get enough help. Our school teachers don't have enough aides and everything else that they need for support within our system. And this is all linked to affordability.
Right.
People gotta be able to afford to live where they're gonna work. And so we as a state, as districts, as towns, we have to come to the table and figure out many solutions together to do this, not just one thing at a time. We need a bunch.
And then the other aspect of this is, if the economy, you know, continues to get tough, as things get thinner, our area is a service center, and you're going to have people moving from other parts of Maine to move closer to the services that are here, which just beyond just adding people to our population for our workforce, we're also going to get like this housing thing again, just needs to happen so urgent. I got 2 more questions I want to get to. I love this conversation. I could do it for hours. Question 4, if voters could only know 2 things about you before they fill out their ballot, what would those 2 things be?
Oh, that's hard.
I know, right?
I already mentioned that I've been here and where I come from and what I do. You know, one thing I guess I would say about me is I'm a firm believer that we should always have people with lived experiences in the room when we're creating laws and regulations. And I think if we do that, we become a better representative government than what we already are. And what I mean by that is, you know, if we're discussing laws around education, we need to make sure that we have teachers and everybody that's involved in that process in the room when we're making them bills. If we're talking to families about daycare, we need to have them in the room. If we're making regulations for a fishing community that's going to affect their livelihoods, we need to make sure that they're at the table. And I think, you know, so yeah, I just think that I'm a strong advocate for those who have lived experience. So I think they're the experts at what we're discussing, and that's who we should be listening.
One of the phrases that my friends are tired of hearing me say, because I just have been saying it now for a couple of years, and I've been using on these videos a lot as we have these conversations, is this, I predicted this phrase a couple of years ago, and it says familiarity is a necessary ingredient for understanding. And it just speaks to, once you've been touched by something, you're much more okay with it. You're much more comfortable with it. You're much more willing to tackle it. But to do that, we need people with those experiences to be in the room, you know, where it happens. We need those people willing to listen to those folks as they're going into legislative committee meetings. There are some well-minded policies that end up not doing the things that the policies are meant for, because the people that the policies were meant for weren't in the room and could tell you, hey, that actually isn't the best way because of this other regulation thing that we have to deal with federally that you didn't know about and that sort of thing. And so again, that's why it's crucial to go out. Now you said before we started recording, you've knocked on how many doors?
I've knocked on over 3,500 doors.
3,500.
Well,
That
whole
is
campaign is probably close to 5,000 doors now, but
that's
I've spoken to the thousands of people. And I'm just going to jump back to that question that you asked me, because the second thing that I would want people to know about me is that my advocacy on issues that affect our state and its people did not just start when I decided to run for office. You know, I've been advocating in Augusta for years on issues from raising wages, healthcare, disability rights, fair taxation, for many years in Augusta. And I view being a representative of a district as being an advocate for that district.
Yeah.
And if I win this, I get to bring more voices to the table and a bigger table to advocate for those issues. So that would be the jumping back to that. That would
no,
be
that's no. I'm glad you did jump back. We were gonna circle back anyway. So that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Before I ask the last question, Cheryl, is there anything else that I mean, yes, there's 100 more issues that we can talk about, but anything specifically that you say, hey, I want to make sure I say this in the video before we end.
Well, you know, I'd have to say that I'm very thankful to have this opportunity to run for office. And as you mentioned, you know, being out on the doors, it's been amazing.
Yeah.
You know, there hasn't really been any really bad experiences. I've spoken to 1,000 people at the door in the house. They've been invited into the houses, you know, and I've learned so much from everybody. And yeah, you know, I just it's happy to see so many people involved in the process.
I love that. So last question 5. What's the best way for people to connect with you or to find out more about you as a candidate?
Well, they can go to my website. It's www.Cheryl House District 99. And there's an email link right there to contact me, or they can go to my Facebook page and send me a message.
Great. And we'll get both of those posted in the description of this video as well, so that people can just click on those. Cheryl, what a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You have a wonderful rest of your day.
Talk soon.